I'm going to tell you about the time that I encountered an extraterrestrial when I was a kid, and I'm going to go all the way into this story. But first, I want to share a little bit about me with you guys before I jump into this really crazy story. And it's that I've actually wanted to do YouTube since I was 17. I'm now 34. That's like, I don't know, my math isn't mathing, but like 18 years or something like that. And over the years, especially when I was younger, I had no idea what it is that I wanted to do on YouTube. I just knew that I wanted to be on YouTube. I just knew that I loved expressing myself. I loved talking. I loved sharing stories, and I loved sharing information. I am a Gemini, of course. We do love sharing information. And so over the years, especially in my 20s, what I really wanted was to either like vlog or do story times, because I feel like I have so many crazy stories that would have just been so entertaining for people. And I'd like to think that I'm a good storyteller, but we'll see once we start telling this story on camera. We'll see how that goes. And I'm also in this new phase in my journey right now where I'm starting to understand that I put a lot of responsibility on myself to the point of where I don't ever let myself have fun or do things just for fun. And so when I think about this YouTube channel and always wanting to do content, I'm always thinking about like what would be like the most helpful and what would be like just so responsible and like how can I earn something? And it's just like it takes all the fun out of it. And the truth is like I've tried filming other videos today that were like more serious and responsible, and it just wasn't working for me. And when I asked myself like what do I actually want to do? I'm like, I really want to kind of tell my story about the time I encountered an extraterrestrial when I was a kid. And it has no reason, it has no meaning, it has no purpose other than I just want to do it because it would feel good for me. And I'm hoping that some people might be entertained by it. And at the very least, I get to share a really cool story. So that's where I'm at. That's what's going on with me. And this is why I want to share this story, is because I just want to. I just want to just because I think it would be fun. I think that you guys might be entertained with it. And like, we're living finally in a day and age where like talking about these things is a little bit more acceptable, because I think people have kind of called me crazy my whole life with all of my spiritual beliefs or all of my spiritual encounters or certain things that I've experienced in my life. Is it on this side? Maybe it's on this side. I don't even remember. I have a tattoo of an alien somewhere on me. I don't know why I'm showing you guys, but like, I think it's on this side. I don't know. But I used to be obsessed with aliens when I was younger because I was visited all the time. But there's one story I want to share with you guys that like really sticks out. And yeah, my whole life, I've always just been a believer. You know, I always just thought it was so silly. Like, how could we think that like out of the billions and trillions of galaxies that exist, we're the only life that exists? Nah, I don't think so. And so I really love that this is becoming just like regular information these days. And it's something that we can just so openly talk about because it's just such a normal part of life. Like, let's be real here. We got homies living in the sky who are, in my opinion, wanting to be here, wanting to make contact, wanting to be a part of life with us and coexist with, I'm sure, the other species and the other beings that probably already exist together out there. But like, we're a little bit unevolved as humans. I mean, we still have like this really perpetuating state of like war and self-hatred and hatred for each other and like collective division. So like, why would they come here anyway, you know? But anyway, without further ado, let's get into this story because it's an interesting one. So when I was younger, I grew up with I grew up in the 90s, right? Like, when you grew up in the 90s, your parents didn't really care where you were as long as you came home for dinner time. I was also, due to just trauma in my life, I was really mature for my age, and my mom really trusted me. And so I must have been, I want to say like 5 years old, 6 years old at the time. And we had a park that was like a couple blocks from our house, and I wanted to go play at the park. And it was like sometime in the morning, like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. I remember because I just like finished eating cereal, and then I wanted to go play. And so I'm at the park and I'm playing on the jungle gym, and I'm collecting these like little green bean things that like grow on trees that aren't actually beans, but they look like green beans. And I'm like picking them off the tree, and I'm like, you know, collecting them and pretending I'm like cooking in this like kitchen on the playground, you know, doing things kids do. And I couldn't have been there much more than like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. Of course, like my perception of time, this happened like 30 years ago and you're a kid, time's different when you're a kid. But like, I'm going to just put a time frame on it and say, I don't know, within a half hour, I decide I want to go to the big kids side of the playground, which is like way on the other side of the school across the basketball court. And so I start making my way over there and I'm walking through the basketball courts when all of a sudden I started to feel like I was walking through sludge. Like I just felt like, ooh, ooh. Everything got really slowed down. And I just had this feeling like something was behind me or something was like watching me. And so like I kind of like move around in slow motion and I see this like little ship. Now I'm 5 years old, right? So like what is that? Like 3 feet tall? Something like that, like 3.5 feet tall. I don't know, maybe not even that. And this thing was like hovering just like chest level to me. And it was probably like, I know you can't see if I use my arms, but I don't know. I would say like I'm 5'3", and I would say that the back end of it's like the wingspan was probably about the length of my arm span. And the best way to describe this ship was kind of like a triangular ship, almost like a fighter jet, but like not really. More just triangular, very flat, except for there was like kind of like on a fighter jet, how the cockpit, kind of has like a doming shape because that's obviously where the pilot would be. So this thing was like all black with this like almost green, forest green, pearlescent color to it, shimmer almost to it. And the texture, it was like a gemstone, I almost want to say, but like rubber at the same time. Maybe it was just because it was shiny, I don't know, but like it kind of like was a rubbery looking structure and it was all black. Like the whole thing was like blacked out with that green pearlescent color and you couldn't see anything. And I just remember staring at this thing and it's just like hovering beside me. And again, everything feels like slow and sludgy. And at some point, the doming part of this like triangular flat ship dissolved in front of my eyes. Like there was a chunk of it that like just dissolved. And there was like this clear dome, this like cockpit area where there was a humanoid being. Now this being, I mean, its head was like this big. Like it was not like maybe the size of a baseball. And when I say humanoid, I mean it kind of looked human. I would say that it looked more human than anything, but its face was like scrunchy and it almost looked like severely sun damaged, I guess. Like it was just like a really like scrunchy and weird. And I can't imagine this thing being much more than a foot tall. I mean, I couldn't tell because it was sitting in this craft, right? And I just remember it having this like kind look on its face, like this smile. And I could hear what it was saying. And it was saying things to me, but its mouth wasn't moving. It was like I was telepathically receiving messages from this being. And what it was saying was that it's time to go, my child. Your mission is needed elsewhere. I need to take you with me. We have to go. And I just remember thinking like, oh my God, I got to like tell my mom first. I got to let my mom know that I'm leaving, right? Because for me, I was like really responsible. So if I was going to go somewhere different than where my mom knew me to be, which was the park, that I was going to have to tell her so she wouldn't worry. Like that's who I was. When I answered the phone, I would be like, pardon me. Hello. Yes. Thank you. Like really like kind and responsible. And so I remember saying to this being like, okay, yeah, I want to come with you. I really want to come, but I just need to go tell my mom first. I need to let her know that I'm leaving. And I remember it saying like, no, my child, we must go now. Time is of the essence. We've got to go. We've got to go. And I realize as I'm saying this, it sounds very like rapey or like stranger danger, stranger danger. And I mean, yeah, you could see it as that. And, I just remember like I started to like the sludginess wasn't as sludgy and I started to like move away from the ship because I was trying to like run towards the direction of my house. And I just kept saying, just wait right here. I'll be right back. I just have to tell my mom that I'm leaving. Like, I promise I'll come right back. Don't go anywhere. And I remember that this being kind of like chuckled almost in a sense, like, oh, silly child, like, now's not the time, or, oh, silly child, you have no idea what's going on right now. And I'll explain what I mean by that later in the story. But they kind of just like chuckled, like, ah, yeah, okay, like, sure. And that clear cockpit dome, it like resolved instead of dissolved. I don't even think that's a word, but it resolved, and it became that black forest green pearlescent coloring again. And it was almost like, yeah, I couldn't see the being anymore. It was gone. And I just remember that the ship started to like slowly move away, and I could feel that the sludge feeling was like beginning to like lift. And I could see that this thing was about ready to take off. And I knew it was going to leave because it said, I guess not this time, my child, for we shall meet again. And just as it went to go like take off, I was gonna go jump on the back and like jump on it. And like, I figured maybe I could catch it or catch a ride. I think in my mind, I was really thinking like, I'm gonna catch it, right? Like, it's not gonna go anywhere. Like, I wanna like know more about this thing. And just as it was about ready to do that, like, it started to like go up like this. And then all of a sudden, it just went directly straight up, like in the blink of an eye, just like ping, and it was gone, like absolutely just gone. And it just didn't exist. All of a sudden, everything went back to normal. And may I also put in here in the story, to give it more descriptive context, is like when I was in this area, like, because I was at the basketball court, but when I was with this being in this space, in this sludgy time, everything in my peripheral, everything in front of me looked like foggy, or almost like there was a white haze over everything, and all I could see was like my own hands and the ship. Like, everything else, like, I couldn't see the school. It was just like blurry, like with almost like a white curtain. I couldn't see the basketball court. I couldn't really see the ground. It was almost like somebody put like a blur filter on the background. And yeah, so when it took off, that had also begin to like dissolve and go back to normal, alongside that like super slow motion sludgy feeling. And then as it like was gone, I just remember thinking like, oh my God, I got to tell my mom about this. Because a little context for me is that I grew up in a pretty spiritually open home. My home was extremely dysfunctional, chaotic, and traumatic, but I also grew up with like a family who believed in spirits and spiritual gifts and aliens and Bigfoot and all these different like spiritual practices and things like that. And so this was like something I knew I could go to my mom with, and she would believe me, and it would be something that we could talk about and she could teach me something about, because this was just a very common occurrence within my household. So I like run home, and then when I get home, my mom looks like she's seen a ghost. Like, she is just terrified, absolutely terrified. And I'm confused, like, why she's so terrified. And she like runs to me, she's hugging me, and she's just saying like, where were you? Where were you? You can't scare mommy like that. Like, where were you? Like, and I was just so confused, because I was like, I was just at the park. I was at the park. And she's like, you weren't at the park. I was there. Where were you? And she's freaking out. And I'm confused, because it's like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm this good kid. I'm really responsible. I was at the park, mommy. Like, I promise. And the thing is like 5 hours had passed. You know, this whole encounter for me felt like maybe 5 minutes, but 5 hours had passed. And my mom said she went to that park and I was not there, but I very clearly remember being in the basketball court. And of course, getting older, you know, I remembered this so clearly growing up. And as I got older and the internet became more accessible and it became more of a thing, I remember like I used to try to search and find any type of information that could disprove this experience. I used to try to like Google like animatronics, because if any of you are like from the 90s or know, like Jurassic Park were all animatronics. Like, they were these electronic like puppet type things. And so I was like, was there any type of animatronics, or like RC planes, like how there's RC cars? Was there something that I could use to like put logic to this, right? Because it was just such a wild and intense experience. And the more that I talked to people about it, the more that I felt crazy. And so I spent many years trying to even disprove myself. And I also spent many years then looking into aliens and alien abduction and different things that have to do with aliens. It's twice now I've been interrupted. My dog's making a bunch of noise in the background, so hopefully you guys can't hear that. But so in all of my years of research, the thing that I've learned was that missing time is such a current, or like not a current, it's what's the word I'm looking for? I feel very like out of the flow now after those interruptions. It's a very common symptom of abduction is to have lost time or missing time, which we were talking 5 hours here as a kid and it felt like 5 minutes for me. So I'm not necessarily going to get into all the details and dissecting this because this video is already getting long enough, but I do have to say that I firmly believe that I actually was taken that day. Although this being so gently was saying, come with me, child, and, there's a mission for you that we need you for, and, we must take you back, or, all of these things, because there was a lot of very kind, reassuring things that this being had been saying to me. And although it made it seem like I was in the basketball court, I don't actually believe I was. I do think that I was taken for a short period of time. For what purpose, what reason, I don't know. All I know is it felt very benevolent. It did not feel malicious or like there was harmful intent. Like it did feel like a very loving experience. And I've always had an affinity to aliens and mythical creatures. I mean, we're talking about somebody, you guys, we're talking about somebody who used to have this cute little orangey brown suitcase that she would scribble symbols on, which now as an adult, I realize is light language. And, it's funny because I speak light language, but I'm not brave enough to do that online yet. So maybe one day in the future, you guys will hear my light language because it's pretty dope. But back in the day, I didn't know what it was. I thought I was just scribbling symbols, and I used to draw dragons on it, which I work a lot with dragon energy. But yeah, this suitcase of mine had a whole bunch of books on like fairies and Loch Ness and aliens and ghosts and paranormal activity and Sasquatch and Bigfoot and time travel and all of these like really cool paranormal, metaphysical, mythical type books. And I'd put them all in this suitcase and I'd like walk around like a Jehovah's Witness and like knock on people's doors and be like, do you want to know the truth of our universe? Like I was the most badass kid. So I do truly believe that I have a connection to all of this for a reason. I think that all of us do if we're willing to be open to and explore that. But I definitely had a lot of these different occurrences in my childhood, most of which I don't remember as much, but I do so distinctly remember this specific event so much. And after telling this story to you guys, I'm even curious, like, I really wonder what that was about. I've never really taken any time to go in and meditate about it and maybe even like make contact and ask my body even and feel into my body, like what did they do to me that day? Like, where did I go? Like, what happened during this missing and lost time? Yeah, that's actually something like I might end up actually doing that because I don't know why I've never thought of that. But anyway, that's my story of the time I encountered an extraterrestrial. And I have many more stories about mythical creatures, whether it be fairies or little people, Bigfoot, Ogopogo, Loch Ness, other ghosts, ghoulies. I've encountered so many different things like that in my life. And I've just encountered a lot of interesting things in general. So I've also just had a really interesting life. And on this YouTube channel, as much as I'd like to talk about educational stuff, I also want to do entertainment. As I'm growing and developing as an artist on my own journey, I want to start eventually sharing my music that I want to be creating. I want to be sharing my acting and comedy skits, but I also want to be sharing my personal story and I want to share educational information. I just want to share me with the world. I feel like I've spent so many years hating myself and not thinking that I have something beautiful and fun and memorable and meaningful to offer the world that like I'm finally at a point in my life where I'm like, you know what? I'm just enough. I'm enough. My story is enough. What I want to do is enough. My art is enough. What I have to give, my knowledge, my experience, I am enough. And so I really hope you guys enjoyed listening to the story. And I really hope that in following me, you understand that my channel is like, it's a frequency of me. It's a multidimensional portal that allows you into me, all that I have to offer. I'm not some kind of weird, niche that just talks about X, Y, and Z. I don't want that to be this. And so if you've made it this far, thank you so much. And I hope that you stay tuned and you stay in my field so that you can receive more beauty that is me. Anyway, I love you guys and have a great day. Bye.